Hello, Internet. Welcome to another Wednesday serial. Today, I'm doing my turtle books that I got in my latest shipment, and this is a pretty major one, which, as with comics, means the next one of these I do will be pretty major too. So, the main thing here is Turtles 150. This is the end of the run for IDW, but maybe not so much. Um, I didn't know quite what to make of this. It's actually a comic I sat down and really read twice, which isn't something I normally do with my monthlies, especially within this time duration. So, there's a lot of build to this. There's all the play with Armageddon, the realities of the turtles, where they are in the future, a little bit of the past. I mean, some of that past ringing back to very early in the IDW run, and Sophie Campbell has introduced this idea of mysticism with Q&A, which is like your soul essence essentially, but like routed as DNA, which makes it more quasi scientific in a way, which is interesting because that intersects with once that revelation happens, we see a lot of future glimpses of a Donatello who becomes a wizard, but as he gains more ability with this, he becomes more detached. And in this issue, we're introduced to a number of creations that Donatello put forward. And he refers to them as drawings and brings out this pen slash wand looking thing that he did it with to undo one of the creations. And there's this idea of any creator tiring of their creations as time goes on because they're not as happy with it as they hope they would be. Very interesting commentary with this being 150 and where they want to go with it. Um, and it's interesting, but the only of the main turtles here is Donatello, and they introduce these new creations of his, and then they know that Armageddon needs to happen so that the Q&A from feudal Japan of the brothers from the Hamato clan is taken and put into the Turtles, where we meet them in the first issue. But with where this is going, it seems like the reset we're going to get with the Turtles is going to pick up from this point. So, however you want to view time travel, maybe it's a new timeline or whatever. And the beauty of that is, unlike a Marvel sense of that, of having to keep track of these versions of the characters, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's a conceit to give a fresh start, but also have some ties to this, which kind of comes in with just the publishing schedule of while they're doing that. There's this, The Untold Destiny of the Foot Clan, which is playing off that story where we originally found out about the whole Hamato clan thing, which has really been a through line with these IDW comics. And so they're kind of refreshing the line and moving it forward, and what's going to stay and what's going to go should be interesting. But it's really creating a big jumping on point and also refreshing the age. We were definitely reaching a point with this run having gone over a decade now that the teenagers certainly weren't reading like teenagers anymore. I'm fine with that. But there is this tie. I mean, it's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so they are resetting. I don't know. Should be interesting. Um, I don't know. This book feels like a lot of setup. There's some interesting. It's interesting that there's this book. There's very few mutants in here, and there's a lot of play with all the human characters, and they're going to carry that forward. I think there's something there, especially with the fact that there's been so much focus with Mutant Town and all that, giving these characters some of their due, especially as we're going through this shift. I think is interesting and shows that I think they want to reset. Like, you're definitely going to want a bunch of mutants, but I don't think they want to have a mutant town moving forward. And I think part of the reset was Sophie Campbell having all these plans and doing all this. And I think they wanted something closer to the general status quo for Turtles moving forward. and this kind of does that neatly with a decent ending. It's hard though, because 150 is the end of the run, and Donatello's the only turtle in it. We don't have the other three or the other four really, and Venus is with Donatello too, but she doesn't feel. She's been introduced in this last breath of the series, but isn't one of the main ones. So we don't have a lot of that character connection. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily feel resolved or like we were building to something with Raphael taking his predilections and anger and all that and then focusing it into being a good cop, but maybe not being a good cop and like that whole thing. That was actually a really interesting way of going about it. Leonardo, where he was going, is just kind of lost, and his venture into mysticism was dropped too in favor of Donatello's understanding of it. And then Michelangelo's connections and all this, which was literally the point of it, it was a bit more resolved. Like he had connections to all these people, and he was kind of their heartbeat, which feels right and makes sense. But also, all of that is now it never happened. Maybe I don't know. We'll see how they launch in, but I'm wary of it. And I don't know. It's a good story. It was a good story. It wasn't a good end cap for the stories, I guess, and that I believe was the issue. Okay. Next up, we have the Saturday morning adventures. There's this character, Master Og, that's a multiversal character. And this book's been sitting in the background and capturing a lot of people's attention. But this is building to probably what's going to be the biggest couple of issues that this title is going to put out, where there's going to be a multiversal section of turtles fighting each other. So all the turtles from the various cartoons are going to be going at it. And once they do that, that's going to be the big event of this comic. They might have some stories after, but nothing's going to be quite that big again. Um, so another big thing. And then interestingly, it's I'm relating this to turtles. It's also I don't know where else I'd put this when I split up my videos. Um Eastman's doing this book called Drawing Blood, and he has a few of his cohorts that he's picked up since he kind of came back to doing comics a bit more with him. Ben Bishop being primary among them in my mind, at least. And it's about this lapsed comic creator and like going on the circuit and then them getting involved in some crimes to deal with money and whatnot. It's like a haywire behind the music kind of episode, but for a comic creator and then heightened a bit more. And it's kind of interesting. It suffers a bit, I think, from something I think a lot of people are a bit burnt out on, which is like movies, talking about the movie industry, is comics, talking about the comic industry, that kind of like insider baseball thing. Here, though, I feel like it works a bit better because it's playing off those details and intricacies to build through lines on the plot and character connections in a way, and it isn't just kind of a lack of imagination to bring it forward. Um, it's weird though because this is the first issue, but there was a Drawing Blood comic a few years back that this is playing off of, and then there was the Rascal Rats something, I forget what it was, but it was a playoff of TMNT that Eastman was doing, and then they did a comic like that straight, and so all of that is kind of playing into this, and I'm wondering when they collect it if it's all going to be put in one tight volume or if they're going to try to split it in some way there as well. um I don't know. It's really compelling though, and the switch with all the art and everything actually makes a lot of talking scenes and whatnot more compelling and interesting to move through. So if you haven't, I would suggest checking that book out. It is quite literally unlike anything I've read without being too off the grid or anything. It's not some like weird indie experiment or whatever, some bizarre heavy metal mini that never is gonna go anywhere or anything. Like, this is playing more like a full on comic, more conventionally, but not quite like anything else. So, yeah, cheers.